Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone for joining us in today's webinar on Atlassian Enterprise Cloud. What's next? What's new? This webinar is brought to you by Express Computer, partnered with Addteq at Atlassian. I'm Govind Chaudhary, correspondent Express Computer from the Indian Express Group, and I welcome you all as your host for the day. In this webinar, we will have a deep discussion on Atlassian's latest cloud offering for big enterprises that would help them streamline their processes, increase efficiency, enhance security, and in the end, answer a lot of queries that you might have related to cloud deployment. So we start the sessions, but before that, I will read out the webinar information. This webinar is being broadcasted live and will be available as on demand on our website. This is an audio-visual webinar. We will have poll questions in between. I request you all to participate in the same. We will have a round of Q&A towards the end of the session. You can send in your questions using the Q&A text box, and we will address the same after the presentation. If you face any technical issues, please use the Q&A text box to send in your issue, and we will try to sort the same to the best of our abilities. If any of your questions are unanswered, we will connect you over the email to answer the same. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have a survey in this webinar, which will be launched at the end of this webinar. Now, I would like to introduce our prestigious speakers for the day. To begin with, we have Mr. Himanshu Chetri from Addteq with us, who has a strong and rich work experience of more than 16 years in DevOps and Agile technology. Further, we have Mr. Scott Davis from Atlassian with us, who heads the solution engineering from APAC region. Mr. Scott is a veteran when it comes to cloud technology across multiple industries, with an experience of more than 30 years. At last, we have Deepthi Anampudi with us. She's from Atlassian, a technical account manager. She is well versed with the Atlassian ecosystem and can help you with all your complex questions related to migrations. And now I'll proceed towards the agenda. So dear all, first we'll be beginning with intro to Addteq. Then we would have introduction to Atlassian Cloud, cloud versus data center. Following, we would have introduction to Atlassian Cloud Enterprise. Then challenges while migrating to cloud and how to plan your app or plugin migration. Then we'll talk about Addteq, your cloud migration expert. We also have an offering from the Atlassian, and then we'll proceed towards Q&A. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the platform to our first speaker, Mr. Himanshu Chetri, who will get us started with the webinar. Over to you, Mr. Himanshu.
All right. Thanks, Govind. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And before we proceed into the core content of the webinar, I just wanted to briefly introduce Addteq as a company. And Addteq is a global DevOps organization, and we are headquartered out of United States from our Princeton, New Jersey office. And we have more than 15 years of global industry experience across ALM and DevOps. We are one of the top Atlassian solution platinum partners in the world. And we are also an AWS select tier partner for infrastructure management and automation. Beyond just providing solution services, we also build apps on the Atlassian marketplace. And we are also an Atlassian certified top vendor on the Atlassian marketplace. And our Atlassian Platinum Solution Partner status is both in the US and the India region. We have more than 8 Atlassian apps that we've released on the marketplace, and we have also helped our customers with numerous other sort of in-house or private apps or add-ons. And our client base ranges from SMBs to large enterprise. And in terms of industry verticals, we work through all of the major verticals like finance and insurance and retail and so on. Pretty much, we are focused on all of the major ones. And our specialty ranges both in terms of product development as well as services. So again, being a DevOps centric organization, we definitely have a lot of experience with the DevOps consulting. As an Atlassian partner, we do a lot of work around Atlassian software implementation. We also specialize in integrating a lot of different types of systems. So we do system integrations. As part of that, we also help our customers do all kinds of migrations. And obviously, we'll be talking about some of that today, especially as it pertains to the Atlassian tools. And as part of our DevOps expertise, we also have expertise in CI/CD, or continuous integration and deployment. And like I mentioned, we also develop custom apps for the Atlassian ecosystem. We also have a SaaS-based hosting service for different kinds of DevOps tools, and we provide a lot of training to our customers as well. And we also resell Atlassian and other software. And like I said, our client base is pretty diverse, and it's across all of the different kinds of industry verticals globally, both in the US, APAC, and the rest of the world. So in terms of our core products, especially as it pertains to the Atlassian apps in the Atlassian marketplace, we have our flagship product called Excellent Table, which provides dynamic and collaborative spreadsheets right within Conference itself. The other is we have a suite of apps called Unstoppable, which helps you make your Atlassian tools compliant for the visually impaired. And then as part of our DevOps expertise, we have a product called Code Factory, which provides managed SaaS-based hosting for all of your development and SDLC tools, as well as this same technology is used to automate the deployment and management of these tools in on-premise and self-managed cloud environments as well. So I will hand it over next to Govind to go over the first poll question that we have.
Thank you, Himanshu, for a lovely introduction. Now I'll read the poll question. So the question says, what are the challenges you face while migrating to the cloud? I'll repeat the question. What are the challenges you face while migrating to the cloud? And the options are, is it data residency and compliance? Is it security? Is it technical expertise? Is it customized solutions, plugins and others? Or is it cost? I'll once again read out the options. Is it data residency and compliance? Is it security? Is it technical expertise? Is it customized solutions, plugins and others? Or is it cost? I request our audience to participate in the poll. We'll wait for the answers. We have got the answer. 31% people have chosen data residency and compliance. 25% people have chosen security. And the rest, 31% people again have chosen about the customized solutions. 13% people have talked about the technical expertise. Thank you, audience. And now I would invite Mr. Scott to take over.
Thanks, everyone. And on behalf of Atlassian, welcome. I wanted to cover a variety of things today with you. I imagine, actually, I've probably spoken to some of you in the past. Hopefully, we'll get back in the not too distant future to seeing each other again in person. But until now, we have webinars like this to keep up to speed with one another. I did want to position this not so much on specific products or solutions, at least not initially. We'll certainly get there. But I do want to take a step back in terms of what are some of the larger trends and patterns and best practices that we see from Atlassian regarding really improving the effectiveness of teams and really getting the enterprise ready for the future of what that work environment needs to look like. As was mentioned, I am based out of Sydney. I head up our solutions engineering team for all of APAC, but I have worked in technology sectors for about 30 years in the US, in EMEA, as well as in APAC. And for Atlassian specifically, the team that I manage kind of leans into some of the largest, most complex types of installations and migrations that Atlassian tends to see year on year. Now, up until a couple of years ago, we were all dealing with what I would say is a fairly standard set of competitive pressures and disruptions different competitive factors, looking at new ways of working, looking at different levels of agility. But of course, we don't have to look back too long ago to where suddenly that got turned on its head with a COVID-fueled work from home environment, and with many of us quite quickly overnight having to sort out how we can actually improve the effectiveness of teams as part of that. Not only because of how the technology needs to change and how we keep teams operating at the same pace, but also looking at things like whether you call it the great resignation or the big exit, or just people now getting used to working from a variety of venues differently. How do we take that on board in an appropriate way to really manage to ramp up not just how companies work, but the effectiveness of teams as part of that, especially in an agile construct. Interestingly enough, this is something that's always kind of been close to the Atlassian core business model in terms of our ability to really shine when we're focusing on, again, not just products or even processes and methodologies, but how to ultimately impact the productivity, how to unleash the full potential of each and every team. And I think it's good for each of us to take that mindset on board when we look across all the different solutions that we put out there, any acquisition we make, any new feature set that we put out there. A lot of the prioritizations that we put on our roadmap are really done with this at its core. How can we unleash the potential of every type of team, not just software teams, which certainly with Jira we have a long-standing history with, but all different teams inside of an organization. Now, that certainly speaks to a core set of amazing products, as well as an ecosystem of many of the solutions that was just being discussed from the Addteq perspective, and a number of different practices and methodologies that continue to evolve over time. And it really takes a solid foundation across all of those to really make that work and to really make Atlassian specifically accessible and really centralized to every team across an organization. And when I say every team, I definitely mean, again, a lot more than just software teams. It could be software to marketing, HR to finance to legal. And we have products now available that really allow you to manage and interrelate a number of different work streams across technical and business parts of the organization. We truly believe that teams, not just the technology, are really what power great businesses. And it's easy to put on a slide, but what are some of the things that we've seen in terms of distilling down from that common things to zero in on, in terms of how we connect people in different ways, closer to how they work, more effectively with how that work interrelates? How can we do that in a way that really pushes the edge on different types of agility, and gaining prioritization through a number of different areas as part of that to ensure that work aligns still to larger corporate objectives? Again, that takes a cohesive platform. It also takes some best practices as part of that. And we've managed to package these up in these reusable deliverables that you can view online called team playbooks. If you haven't spotted these previously, the origin for team playbooks was actually out of our own internal curiosity when we had a few hundred different teams several years back. And we, like many other large organizations, noticed that there were different teams that could operate to different levels of effectiveness. Some parts of the organization took it on board really well, some not so much. So what can we do in terms of dissecting and reusing and leveraging a lot of that? What was it that some of these teams had that others didn't? And how can we replicate that across more departments to scale that up another level? That curiosity is what led to these team playbooks. And again, it started out internally. We since augmented that through now over 200,000 customers globally, many of which are fairly large in nature as well. And we've continued to add a number of different aspects to that from those perspectives. They contain really two main parts. Health monitor as part of that. We can actually go in and take a baseline assessment from a quantifiable perspective and see how the teams are operating. We do these all the time internally to this day. My own team goes through this once every couple of quarters to give you kind of a readout of not just how the individual or the department or the organization, but again, how that lower level team is actually functioning, that organization of 5 to 10 to 12 people. How does the team think they're doing? And that will lead into a sequence of recommended team plays to focus in and augment some of those areas that need a little bit of additional assistance as part of that. These are packaged up again for IT, for software, for leadership, for HR, for a number of different types of teams as part of that. And these are freely available on our website to really help teams take on board how they can become more empowered, how they can make all different levels of work visible, how they can ensure that that work aligns to purpose, and to do that in a very open way as part of that. So if I think now moving more finally to the product side of the equation, what does that mean in terms of some products that you may or may not be familiar with? Starting with, again, more the business side of the house, managing their capabilities through something like Jira Work Management. And if you haven't come across this yet, you can kind of think of Jira Work Management like Jira software for developers, Jira Work Management for all the business areas, right? If I'm in HR, if I'm in legal, if I'm in finance, I don't want the big complex field-laden screen that Jira software gives you because it's designed for an agile methodology, but I still need to have different list and calendar and timeline views to manage that body of work. How can I spin that up easily, potentially a same cloud environment as other products to bring a lot of that work under control of the same instances that are out there? Jira Work Management gives you the head start for that. And this was built, again, as with our team playbooks, this was built in conjunction with many of our key customers and with best practices in terms of how to render that information the most effectively for those areas. Jira Work Management can easily tie into or out of Trello, because we see a lot of organizations, especially more on the marketing side and the creative side of the house, who like to use of the additional fluidity that Trello brings to the table as well, while still linking that into Jira Work Management and Jira software so that you can allow a lot of that rapid creation activity, but still structuring out independent elements of that as needed for follow-up. So Trello and Jira as well is a strong combination for other parts of the business, as well as, of course, Confluence for taking all the different types of deliverables that occur as part of those work streams using Trello, using Jira Work Management, and really putting that into a single repository, a knowledge base, if you will, capturing the actual resulting deliverables, as well as the additional commentary and all the work product around that. So that, for example, internally, when we see new updates or new pieces of information come out, we can read not only the decisions that have been made for, let's say, a new feature on a product, but I can actually see the intervening discussion threads on why some of those trade-offs were made or how some of the analyses looped into that, so that we're better equipped in the field in terms of relaying that value out to all of you. So Confluence certainly ties in across the board, regardless of how you manage the work itself, to actually capturing some of the key deliverables of that work. Moving then certainly more to the agile side, Jira software. This again is, especially over the last 20 years now, where Atlassian has really staked its claim in terms of some of the largest agile organizations using Jira software to manage their different types of activity, whether it's Kanban-based or Scrum-based, all the different types of default fields and views and reports to really cycle up the capability of development teams to ensure that that work is done effectively, as well as being to interrelate it between a number of different projects so that from a top-down view, you can see a roadmap of different dependencies and timelines and when some of that work will be finished as well. So things like advanced roadmaps are built in specifically with certain tiers of Jira software in the cloud to allow those additional types of perspectives for how work is progressing. And then once all those deliverables are ultimately pushed out into production for some new release, some online product or solution, for example, how is that operationalized? How do you deal with changes and incidents? How do you even manage, again, changes for non-technical areas of the company as you onboard and offboard employees, as you have requests for purchase orders? All these different examples are instances of what can be managed in Jira Service Management for really managing a lot of that back office interactive production types of activities. Whether it's Jira Work Management, Jira Software, or Jira Service Management, at its core, it's that same Jira workflow engine that gives you different views and different default mechanisms to then structure and control a lot of that activity. So we saw work management with list views in terms of what business users want there, Jira Software having, again, Scrum and Kanban, Jira Service Management being very much focused at how to enable self-service. For one, having a portal view, such as the one being shown here, and pretty quickly tying into a number of different areas to facilitate how you can guide users to really resolving a lot of issues on their own by surfacing up recommended knowledge base items, for example, and or simply just routing them to the right queue to expedite how changes might need to be taken on board, or even deal with incident management in the case of a production environment. All of that is another aspect of how you can use Jira, and is really interesting, especially in the cloud environment, when you layer on products like Optimum, like different levels of CMDB, or a newer product that we acquired not too long ago called Help, where I can take, in addition to default web-based views for a lot of these products, I can allow you to tie into messaging tools that many of you are probably using today. Slack, as we use internally, Teams, as some of you might have been utilizing. You can tie Help in as a plugin to simply take information as it comes in through a messaging channel and trigger a ticket in our Jira Service Management directly off of that, and correlate any commentary back and forth with how agents are actually operating in the ITSM tool itself. So it allows you to get much closer to where that work needs to be. And it's one example of, again, how we improve the effectiveness of teams through some of the acquisitions we make. This one specific to Jira Service Management, or JSM. These are just a few highlight examples of different product features and how they tie in, again, different parts of the organization. Again, with that key concept in mind of empowering teams, making the work visible, doing it in a very open way, still allowing you to ensure that it's prioritized properly, but really with that larger mindset, that larger ethos of how do we unleash the full potential of every team as part of that. And it really does put us quite squarely then at the center of a number of different teams. Now, we do that a few different ways. Some of you may have been using or are familiar with our on-prem products with server and data center, but of course, cloud certainly as an organization is our future. And a lot of what I've talked about and what I'll get into next really focuses on the cloud side of leveraging those products, whether it's Jira or Confluence or some others that we might get into as well. But cloud is certainly where you'll see a lot of energy and focus from us, and a lot of information in terms of, like any other SaaS organization, being able to get all of you out of the software maintenance business, not having to install new releases, to deal with other dependencies, to manage all the different types of operational aspects around that, but rather we take that on board. We ensure that that happens in our environment in a multi-tenant, secure, scalable type of architecture to allow you to then take your resources and focus them elsewhere. So rather than doing boring operational, making the product work stuff, you're building out the cool customizations or adding value to your own organization in a number of different ways as part of that. Now, SaaS offerings from Atlassian come in a few different tiers. Certainly, we've got our free tier. If you just want to spin it up, give it a go, see how the product operates for up to 10 users. We've got a standard tier for a 10 plus that really gets you into the breadth of most of the functionality that we'll go over today. And then where things get really interesting is when you get into more the premium or enterprise tiers, having some advanced features around new types of storage or data residency or IP allow listing, and a number of aspects around that, as well as across the board different levels of security and support that you'll want to tie into that as well. But it's very easy, as you would expect for a SaaS offering. It's very easy for you to start at one tier, migrate up or down as it makes sense for your different organization to kind of grow with you fairly quickly. Focusing on premium and where some of the deltas are, just to get all of us across those. Generally speaking, for the platform itself, the key 3 S's to be aware of when leaning into the premium side is SLA, storage, and support. With premium, we guarantee a 99.9% SLA. We remove the 250 gig limit and give you unlimited storage. And we get you into a priority or a premium queue of a dedicated advanced support team as part of that. And that's across any product in the Atlassian Cloud platform, as well as having additional security features like an IP allow list, where you can go in and specify blocks or ranges of IPs to act in conjunction with other security features to really tighten down access to information that you'll manage in those sites. Having additional controls for non-production environments, to have different staging areas to test changes in the settings that you may make and or different add-ons or customizations. Just as on-prem, you would have had a dev, test, QA, UAT type of a setup. Same thing here, you can have secondary sandboxes for non-production changes and replicate content between them so that you have meaningful environments to actually take a look at things outside of pushing that into the full-blown production setup for all of your users. And that includes, now that we've taken on board operationally, managing that infrastructure and pushing out all the underlying version changes for you, we still give you the ability to throttle how quickly some of those changes might be released to your end users. Even though we're pushing changes out pretty much on a weekly, if not more often basis, depending on the type of change, you can still go in and say, hey, that's great Atlassian, but give me 2 weeks, give me 3 weeks, give me a little bit of time before we actually put this out there so I can get across that, do some internal communications, get my user base ready for what some of those changes may be. So we give you a heads up on those changes. You can also throttle them using release tracks, starting with the premium tier. And then for Jira specifically, there are additional features that are designed just for that particular product itself. Things like automation. When we add, used to be a separate add-on actually that we've now built into the platform, where instead of going in and having to do a bunch of low-level scripting to automate a lot of repeatable activities in our platform, you can simply use a trigger-based mechanism where I can go in, set a particular condition, execute an action. There are a huge number of different type of preset options on this. So the vast majority of time, it's literally a configure and go. If you need to, you can still link in scripting level conditions. Now, Script Runner is a common add-on that's used to do some advanced level types of workflow capabilities. You certainly have that feature at your disposal as well, but it's all done through a common automation framework to really get into a lot of interesting edge cases on how workflows can further be pushed through the system in a more automated and triggered way. And then we can look at things again like roadmaps specific to Jira, where you've got not only the bottom-ups view for the individual teams, things like burn down charts, but top-down, tracking all the dependencies across multiple projects, across different types of work streams, so that I can track dependencies. I can look at how dates are pushing out, when releases might actually be scheduled for availability, versus just kind of the sprint-based view of things, having more of a holistic view on how those changes might actually go out the door for different development teams. As well as over time, when you build out a large repository of information, we'll now give you the capability to also archive a lot of these as well. And archiving, I like to think of as like a logical delete. We take it out of the indices to improve performance, but we won't physically purge it from the system. Old links will still work. Things like auditing and control checks will still be available to you, but it does reduce kind of the level of noise and clutter and performance overhead that's associated with keeping them active. We simply just archive them, remove them from the associated indices, and kind of reduce that clutter as you go to give you a little bit more of a better view over time, especially as you get lots and lots of projects. With Confluence specifically, we get into different types of capabilities around spaces and pages. We've got a huge number of analytics to see how information is not only published, but used. How is it read? When was the last time? How many users? It does get a bit interesting because we tend to use this internally. We can see not only the top line stats, but you can see an itemized view of all the different users who have read information that you've put out there. And nothing catches your attention faster than when you notice one of the co-founders has started reading stuff that you've provided. So it is a bit self-fulfilling, a bit interesting in terms of how analytics can be used to somewhat gamify content creation, or at least let you know how useful some of the information is that you've put out there as part of that. So analytics are baked in with Confluence Premium, additional administrative capabilities like a temporary admin key. So for example, if somebody goes out on holiday for a couple of weeks, you can still get in there and make additional changes to content that perhaps they've locked down, and a whole set of ways in which you can manage and inspect permissions, because over time, especially in Confluence, you can sometimes get into some edge cases on how it's tricky to figure out why someone can or cannot view a particular page. And rather than dealing with a lot of guesswork and just indiscriminately modifying group settings or permission schemes, we'll give you a nice view that'll actually call that out for you directly. Why is it that myself or Deepti, for example, can't view this specific piece of content, and what can therefore be done to resolve that in a shorter amount of time? It gives you a couple of views around that, whether it's for pages as well as spaces, and a number of different ways to archive information in Confluence, just as within Jira as well. Over time, especially with even more so actually with Confluence, in terms of pages and spaces and attachments, and being able to archive some of that information out, because the only thing worse than not being able to find the right piece of information is finding old information. So having different ways, and we've seen some interesting setups where this ties back into automation, being able to kind of purge and refresh and keep this information a bit more up to date and cleaner for individuals as well. So a lot of specific features as well as platform consistent features at the premium tier around Jira and Confluence. It gets even more interesting when you start looking at things around enterprise. And the best way to think of enterprise is really premium plus. So it's everything, of course, in standard, everything that I just covered in premium, and it adds on top of that a higher SLA. So instead of 99.9, you get 99.95, which equates to about 43 seconds of downtime maximum per day. And this SLA is guaranteed. It's a financially backed guarantee. We have unlimited instances. So rather than paying per user per instance, we can open that up and say, pay for Scott one time. He can access all 20 instances that we might have within the organization. We have, of course, data residency and the additional support that I talked about earlier as part of that. And it also includes our security product for the platform. So Atlassian Access that ties into your IDP, that allows SSO and two-factor authentication and all that good stuff is actually built into the Cloud Enterprise tier to manage all of your users holistically across the entire platform. So in terms of some of these additional features, and at a top line, some of the things to be aware of, we're currently at 20,000 users GA. We're quickly ramping that up to 35. There's talk of 50. You know, this indicator is only going to go up and to the right in terms of maximum users per single instance. We've actually come quite a long way from just, as you can see here, a couple of years ago, where we were at about 2,000, and we've already gone 10x in just 3 short years. And again, we'll continue to push that up and to the right. So we're seeing our cloud enterprise environment being used by some fairly large organizations at this point, and we're definitely going to be working to make that scale up even further. Probably the biggest thing that I see personally with customers who are interested in cloud enterprise is, again, this idea of unlimited instances. In the past, on-prem with server going to data center, the major issue was having to collapse a lot of that down, put it all into one install that then you managed the infrastructure. You had to clean all of that up. You had to do kind of a lot of housework to set that in order. And there were some barriers that you just couldn't get past there in terms of how you could or could not configure things. Cloud Enterprise allows for a bit more natural federation, where if you've got 5 or 10 or 15 instances today on-prem, you want to keep them separate going into the cloud. You don't want to double or triple or quadruple pay for users. You can do that with Cloud Enterprise. Having said that, of course, the pricing model is different. There's a breakpoint in terms of when that makes sense from a cost efficiency perspective. So, I have a chat to Addteq or one of our enterprise advocates around what those different levels are. But at certain instances, Cloud Enterprise definitely makes sense, so that, for example, paying once for my user ID across 4 sites that are shown here on the slide, you would pay for an individual once, and they have access to all the different sites. This is one of the biggest things that I've seen enterprise really pick up users' attention on. For us internally, we actually have different setups for support, for Trello, for Jira, for security, for finance. One that's not even shown here on the slide is we have another one that's for a big Confluence instance that's available to everybody. So we've got several different core repositories that we've lined up mainly by functional area, but you can line it up specific to any corporate designation you want, any particular regions or countries. If you want to manage, again, a federated setup of different acquisitions or by business unit, there are a number of different ways in which you can tie in Cloud Enterprise to, again, centralize the user costs, centralize the billing as part of that, as well as manage all of those users in a central location, still being able to be across everything that's happening while still enabling each instance to tailor its own customizations, perhaps some of its own security settings, as well as its own add-ons that it might use in that particular site. So a lot of flexibility there. And again, 99.95, 43 seconds a day, guaranteed SLA as part of that. Now, that's all great. We're across the different tiers. We understand some of the feature differences. But one of the other things to call out as well is it is software. Stuff sometimes goes wrong. Things can break. What does that mean in terms of support? So certainly you get one of the higher tiers of support built into Cloud Enterprise with priority phone support, with reduced SLA responsiveness on a variety of different tickets. and dedicated senior level support staff as part of that. In terms of general security and compliance and how do we tick all the right boxes to have a chat with your InfoSec team, this is actually where my team specifically leans in quite a lot with a number of different customers to have chats on what does the architecture look like, what does that mean for encryption in transit at rest, what are all the different acronym soup of certifications that we have, and what are the different admin controls to enforce SSO and different types of two-factor authentication and tying back to a centralized IDP. This is a whole discussion in and of itself that we have quite a bit, just to get everyone comfortable with that in a variety of different geographies and verticals. And we've had in-depth discussions with a number of different governments and financial services and different regional types of requirements. So happy to lean in here specifically, especially for those of you that need to start having that conversation whenever looking at moving from on-prem instances into the cloud and how to get everyone more comfortable with how that operates and what that will look like for you in the future. As part of those discussions, one of the biggest things that we tend to get into is looking at different levels of data residency, making sure that data remains onshore for specific regions. And actually, since this slide was published, we've got one more. Australia has become available as an area in which you can pin data to a specific section. So if that's a concern for you, these are the only 3 regions that we have right now. Chat to us on more if you need more around that or where other regions may fall in terms of a roadmap. The data residency for those areas, especially at a cloud enterprise tier, can be very easily managed in the admin console. You can pick any site, any product in there and dictate that you want data that can be pinned to only live in a certain region. Far easier than it used to be in the past. On the security side, in terms of tying into different types of authentication mechanisms, again, we have Atlassian Access that will allow you to tie into common IDPs like Azure, like Google, like Okta, as we find customers quite often have, to manage those users centrally, to authenticate them in a consistent way across the entire platform, whether it's Jira, whether it's Confluence, whether it's Trello, and then to manage and audit all that activity consistently as well for compliance reasons. It's all done through a common cloud platform layer. So no more as you used to have to do on-prem, having a variety of different add-ons or config settings per product or per instance. With Atlassian Access, you set it up, you configure it, you validate your domain one time, and it's in place for every managed user for every product in the system. So much easier to set up as part of that. And then, of course, we allow you to not only track and manage and provision and deprovision those users, but you can do that in some interesting kind of more automated ways. You can certainly centralize management of those users and profile and permissions pieces of information. You can see how that works at an organization level or a site level. And you can actually have that data flow through more naturally and take advantage of different types of groups and departments to kind of automate the onboarding and offboarding or even just departmental change activities as part of that. It's meant to really manage users at scale. So rather than going in again per product and having to manually figure out where somebody falls into the system, being able to streamline that by using SAML-based SSO and SCIM-based provisioning, deprovisioning, you can really link the systems across much more tightly using those approaches instead. And then we wrap around that a variety of different additional capabilities in analytics. I can see how people are using the system, the products they're logging into, eventually which pages, which add-ons they're hitting and how often will be made reportable as well. So you get a lot of additional insights in terms of how well the system is being used. And that correlates down to a number of different factors as part of that. So just being aware of the time and knowing that I think I'm at the end here, being able to manage all that across not only our own products and a number of different tiers across that, but even with all the cool features that we put into the platform, there are always things that each of you want to do in a one-off way, in a customized way for your different sites as well. And that's where we get into the arena of different types of applications. And as you know, we've got a huge marketplace of add-ons out there for on-prem and in the cloud. And those continue to be available at every tier in our cloud offering. There are some differences between what you may have used on-prem in server and data center, as well as what's available in the cloud. The APIs are different. We have to talk a little bit about data migration as part of that. So there is some reassessment that's done here on the early days of looking at moving across into the cloud environment, but there is a huge amount of add-ons that are still available to again allow some fine tuning on how you want those instances to set up, whether it's for packaged environments that especially any of our strategic partners will make available. A lot of our regional partners, as was mentioned on this call, also create a number of different add-ons. You might also want to create some of your own customizations. And so one of the APIs we make available in the cloud is something called Forge, where you can go in, use the same multi-tenant infrastructure that we've already got set up right on top of all of those different SLAs and security settings, and still extend out additional customizations that you may want to put in place as part of your own development. So Forge is that mechanism to provide that. It's just recently come out of beta, and you can have a look at that as well, especially for those of you that might have put those environments in place using other methods on-prem. Finally, in the past, for those of you who have been longstanding customers, and I've been with Atlassian for 5 years, when I first started, we didn't really share a lot of roadmap information externally. It was actually kind of very hard to get us to open the vest and talk about, what we would be planning in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. We've really come around the other direction, especially in the last year and a half. All of our roadmap, especially on our cloud products, and still also our data center, we do put publicly available roadmap information out there. What new data centers will become available for data residency? When are we going to have custom domain naming features in our cloud environment? And you can see a lot of things that are added to the roadmap, not only just when they're prioritized for, but we usually give a range of a quarter or two. So we'll give you a calendar quarter idea on when these features will come out, as well as soon as something is released, and as we're adding new things continually to this backlog, we'll certainly keep you apprised of those deltas, just so you can know kind of what the latest and greatest is that we've put out there and what we've furthermore committed to in the next upcoming iterations. So a lot of information, a lot going on around there. And as you can imagine, some of these can be fairly complex and time consuming. A lot of the on-prem environments in particular, when looking to move to the cloud, have grown over time, not always with the best governance in place. So really digging into that, really understanding that configuration, that setup, the best way to take that data across in a more useful way, and not just carry over bad practices into the cloud, but really understand how that information needs to be managed and transited across properly. That's where we rely on partners in the region like Addteq, who are well and truly across all the specific ways to really best organize that and pair that up with all the features in the cloud platform, so that you can kind of get up and running quickly and take advantage of all those features to the fullest extent. So there are tools for migration. There are additional resources on the support side of our organization to stay across of your migration effort front to back. But again, it's one part tool, it's one part what we provide, and it's a large part what partners provide. So Addteq in particular can really help you get across the line very, very quickly on understanding how that data needs to move across as part of that. I know I've gone through a lot. I'm sure there are a few questions along the way. I've seen things light up on my screen here as I've gone through the prezo. I know there are many other areas that we can get into, but at least as an upfront intro to this, hopefully that's helpful. And I will now turn it over to the next speaker, I guess the next poll question. And then I hope to chat to you again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for this, for your wonderful insights. Now I think it's time for the second poll question. So I'll read the question. When are you planning to migrate? I'll repeat the question. When are you planning to migrate? I would request our audiences to kindly participate in the poll. I'll read the options. Is it 2 months? Is it within 6 months? Is it 1 year? Or is it 1 to 2 years? I'll repeat the options. Is it 2 months? Is it within 6 months? Is it 1 year? Or is it 1 to 2 years? I'll be waiting for the audience's response. And we have got the results. 53% people have responded that they plan to migrate in 1 to 2 years. 23% people have responded 1 year. Within 6 months have been responded by 13% people, and 10% people have responded 2 months. Thanks a lot, audience, for your response. Now I would like to invite Ms. Dipti to kindly take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Govind. Let me start sharing my screen. So thank you again, everyone, for joining this webinar today. My name is Deepthi Ainampudi, and I'm one of the technical account managers at Atlassian, based out of Bangalore, India. My role is majorly of a strategic advisor with some of our largest enterprise customers, helping them achieve operational, functional, and organizational success. I guide and support them in their journey with Atlassian products and industry best practices. I also handle a lot of conversations around cloud security, and especially with customers planning to migrate to cloud. So on that note today, I am so excited to be presenting to you all about security and compliance in Atlassian Cloud and how it compares with our data center offering. Whether you're new to cloud or have been working with your customers for years, this presentation is kind of a great all-rounder to learn about how we do security at Atlassian and what's upcoming on our security and compliance roadmap in the future. Before I continue, please note that this information and advice contained in this presentation is of general application and is not tailored to your individual circumstances. So many of our enterprise customers are already working in cloud at some capacity or are starting to realize the benefits. In the pockets of their businesses using cloud, they are seeing greater ROI and are able to deliver business value faster for their customers. And as the cloud trend accelerates, we are simplifying our server and data center offerings to focus on delivering a world-class cloud experience. Let's start by taking a quick look at our cloud versus data center offerings. As Scott mentioned in his presentation, cloud is our enterprise managed offering for enterprise customers. We have been heavily investing in building out our cloud capabilities to support enterprise organizations. Here, Atlassian does the heavy lifting for you with built-in platform security and compliance, faster setup and no maintenance required with financially backed uptime SLAs. Cloud comes with the benefit of continuous innovation, so your end users will have the latest and greatest experience. Now, that being said, we're here to meet your needs for today, both today and in the future. So for many of you, that may mean that data center is very much still a part of the equation. So we are continuing to invest in and innovate in data center as well, ensuring that we have offerings that meet your needs now and always. So data center is our self-managed offering for enterprise customers. It's all about managing your environment and deploying where you want. You have the control over data management, security, and compliance, and when you want to upgrade to the latest features of the product. Now, data center comes with capabilities to help you improve performance and uptime, so you have complete control over your instance. Before we talk about security in Atlassian Cloud, I would like to start with a question to the audience and request you to take a moment to think about it. The question is, what do security and trust mean to you? I ask this because there are so many interpretations about what trust, compliance, and security mean in this day and age. Here at Atlassian, Adrian Ludwig, who is our Chief Trust Officer, he states that we will be a leader in cloud security, exceed requirements of all industry standards and certifications, and be proud to publish those details about how we protect customer data. One of the reasons why we are investing so heavily in cloud security is that we know security and compliance are particularly important to you. We have over 180,000 customers in over 190 countries around the world, all doing amazing work on Atlassian tools. And as a result, tons of data gets stored in our products. Maintaining the privacy and security of that data is absolutely critical. It allows you to maintain your competitive edge and preserve your customers' trust. For many of you, it also helps you stay compliant, meet strict regulatory requirements based on your industry or geo, and avoid potential fines. When you're considering making a move to our cloud products, our role in security and compliance of your products is even larger. With Atlassian Cloud, as I said, we handle the infrastructure for you. So it allows you to save time and resources and focus on problems that really matter. It also inherently means that more of the security and compliance responsibilities falls to us. This is why we are so focused on privacy, security, and compliance of our cloud products. In fact, when we asked our customers, the resounding answer is cloud is better, or at least equal, on everything from innovation to security. 91% say security is better or equal on cloud. 92% say compliance is better or equal, and a whopping 97% say innovation, reliability, and change management are better or equal on cloud. And one of our customers told us that the stability and security are substantially better than what they have achieved on-premise. Talking a little about Atlassian's cloud platform, we host our cloud products on AWS. So like with any SaaS product, this means that Atlassian is responsible for maintaining and optimizing the AWS infrastructure for our customers to ensure that their products are available, reliable, and performant. Now, because of how AWS works, our customers' data is located in certain AWS regions. When someone uses data residency, what they are actually doing is pinning it to a specific AWS region. Now, at the product level, we use a multi-tenant architecture with that uses microservices. I will talk a little about this in a couple of slides, so yeah, wait for it. Now, at Atlassian, part of the mission of trust, security, engagement team is to remove security blockers and issues with customers, so they can become a customer, continue being a customer, or even become a bigger customer of Atlassian. Our trust management policy is our overarching policy that contains all our procedures and policies around managing your data, maintaining data and infrastructure, and engendering trust with our customers. Three parts that we're going to talk about our overall trust management policy are data residency. We're going to touch on our enterprise-grade security policies and compliance standards, and we will talk about encryption, data management, and upcoming things on our roadmap. Starting with data residency, as Scott mentioned, data residency support is, we have data residency support for many of our customers that work in industries, with specific data guidelines. This means that you have the choice to pick where your data is hosted, from Jira issues and Confluence pages to comments, attachments, and configuration. You can choose where your data lives. Coming up first in the US and EU, we now have Australia. And we have plans to extend this to additional regions, including UK, Canada, and Japan. So to learn more about data residency, what data you can pin, what data you cannot pin, read our data residency posts and our community posts up there. Moving on to security, let's cover some of the most common questions we get around security, including risk management, business continuity and disaster recovery, and our multi-tenant architecture. Customers looking to move to cloud often want to understand whether we have risk management program in place. And the answer is yes, we do. This is an important program for us to identify any uncertainties and to demonstrate to you that we are constantly evaluating the potential technical and business level risks that we may face so that our Atlassian cloud tools stay secure. We conduct a risk assessment annually and implement projects to mitigate identified risks at least quarterly. Our risk management program helps us to evaluate the current risks we face and ensure we have controls in place to effectively manage any risks. You can learn more about the details of our risk management program and our enterprise risk assessment on our trust site at trust.atlassian.com. Another topic in particular that we often get questions around, and I want to address here, is business continuity and disaster recovery. We know that BC and DR are non-negotiable. After all, GDPR calls for resilience and the ability to restore availability and access to data in a timely manner in the event of a physical or technical incident. Additionally, many of you are using our Atlassian tools for mission-critical work, and we need to ensure that you can rely on those tools. We also rely on our cloud products for our day-to-day work at Atlassian, so we appreciate how important resiliency is. The truth of the matter is that sometimes disruptions occur. So we have robust business continuity and disaster recovery programs in place that allows us to plan for potential disruptions and handle them with minimal impact to our customers, if and when they do occur. The key elements of our BC and DR programs include building in redundancy measures to meet resiliency requirements, testing and verifying those redundancy measures, and learning from tests to continuously keep improving our BC and DR measures. We have built our cloud products to best utilize redundancy capabilities, such as availability zones and regions offered by our cloud service providers. So by leveraging AWS highly available data center facilities in multiple regions worldwide, we have ensured that data can be backed up and replicated to different geographical locations in the event of a disaster, in one region of the world. The last thing I want to cover before moving on to the compliance side of things is when it comes to security, many of our customers want to understand how our cloud architecture is set up. And as I discussed before, a couple of slides back, one important thing about our cloud architecture is that it is multi-tenant, which means a single instance of the software and its supporting infrastructure serves multiple customers. Obviously, this may be different from what you're used with your server or data center products, where you own or manage your own infrastructure. But it's important to understand that while customers share the software application and a single database, each tenant's data is isolated and remains inaccessible to other tenants. We have measures in place to ensure that they're logically separated so that the actions of one customer cannot compromise the data or service of other customers. We use a concept we refer to as tenant context to for logical isolation of our customers. This is implemented both in application code and managed by something we have built called the tenant context service. The approach offers a level of separation that most of our customers need, and shared structure enables greater scalability of our cloud customers. Now, in addition to our legal frameworks and security practices to help ensure our clouds are GDPR compliant, we're also building native functionality into our cloud products that makes it easier for you to comply with GDPR. Now, talking about compliance, our cloud products regularly undergo independent verification of their security, privacy, and compliance controls, achieving certifications, attestations of compliance, and or audit reports against standards globally. We also have a dedicated resource center with white paper mappings against frameworks and laws where formal certifications or attestations may not be required or applied. Now, this is how our compliance roadmap looks like. I can give you exact dates of when they will be available, except for saying sometime in the year. But we are committed to providing visibility into our upcoming security, compliance, privacy, and reliability releases whenever possible. So please head over to our cloud roadmap. We'll have much more details of the upcoming releases and updates on the timelines. Moving on to the third topic, encryption and data management. All customer data in Atlassian Cloud products is encrypted at rest and in transit using Atlassian managed keys in AWS Key Management Service. One call out here is that Bitbucket encryption at rest is coming in Q4 2021, so it'll be there very, very soon. Keep an eye out for the documentation. Another thing is soon we will offer bring your own key encryption, giving you the ability to encrypt your cloud product data with keys hosted in your AWS account. So with BYOK encryption, you will have more control over the management of your keys and will be able to revoke access at any time, both for your own end users and for Atlassian systems. It's also important to note that BYOK will not be applied to all data. So we will publish documentation on what data it supports and what data we will continue to encrypt for you. So if you're interested in this topic, keep an eye out for the documentation, which will be coming out very, very soon. Before I wrap up, I know we're a little short on time. I want to talk a little bit about one more topic that often comes up in the context of security and compliance. That's marketplace apps. We know that many of you rely heavily on our third-party apps to improve or enhance the experience of your Atlassian tools for your team. For many organizations, these apps are just as critical as the Atlassian tools themselves. Now, given that we understand that the security and compliance of these apps is also crucially important, we have a number of programs currently in place, and we are investing more heavily in this space to ensure your apps meet your requirements. To establish a baseline of cloud security, we have come out with a number of programs over the past few years. Our marketplace security programs hold marketplace partners to the highest standards of application security. Atlassian has defined a minimum set of requirements that all marketplace apps must meet. Now, these requirements are mandatory and are aimed at enforcing security best practices across all our apps. We also have Cloud Fortify Apps program, which is for a new designation of apps designed to serve our largest customers and those with more business critical operating requirements when it comes to apps. The Cloud Fortified badge means that the apps meet Atlassian's basic cloud security standards, plus they demonstrate their own investment in cloud security by participating in additional opt-in cloud security programs like Marketplace Bug Bounty Program and security self-assessment programs. They also undergo additional checks for service reliability and performance at scale, like proactive checks to ensure compatibility with upcoming host products. They also have the support that you can depend on. That means these apps have stricter support SLAs to ensure that if a problem does arise, you can expect a timely response from the marketplace partner. If you're interested in learning more about our marketplace security programs, here are some links that will give you more details. I will post them in chat after my talk. On that note, I would like to say thank you and for listening to my presentation today. And if you would like to know more information about how we do security at Atlassian, you can visit our Trust Center at trust.atlassian.com. And thank you and good luck with your endeavor to cloud security. I will now hand it back to Govind. Over to you, Govind.
Thank you, Deepti, for your insightful session. It's time for the poll now. Can we have a final poll question? So the question says, are you interested in a free assessment, cloud roadmap, Atlassian discovery, DevOps? I'll repeat the question. Are you interested in a free assessment, cloud roadmap, Atlassian discovery, DevOps? The options are yes and no. I'll request our audiences to kindly participate in the poll. And now I'll invite Mr. Himanshu to talk about the special offer. Over to you, Mr. Himanshu.
All right. Yep. Thank you. I just want to briefly mention a point before we go to the offer. I want to mention that in your journey to migrate to Atlassian Cloud, one of the main areas that you have to also evaluate is any of the existing third-party or marketplace apps that you're currently using and how to port those over to the cloud. A lot of the popular vendors who build apps on the Atlassian marketplace do have the cloud equivalent, and they generally also have some documentation that they provide in terms of how your data will be migrated if they support that. Also, Atlassian provides cloud migration assistant tools for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket, and this is an example screenshot from the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, which also shows that it can also provide you some preliminary assessment in terms of the apps you have and the state of migrating those to the cloud. And like I spoke about at the beginning of the presentation, Addteq has deep expertise in terms of assisting our customers on their cloud migration journey. And we have this overall framework where we help the customers plan out the migration, execute it, as well as provide post-migration support. Our experience also extends to the enterprise. And I think I also mentioned earlier that, yes, we work with some large enterprise and a lot of the highly customized Atlassian and DevOps tool environments. So we feel that we have the expertise to help other customers as well. And our experience is definitely in the cloud. We also support data center customers. And then also increasingly, we have some customers who are in hybrid environments, where some of their tools are already on the cloud and others are maybe on-prem or in other environments. And they have to maintain that until they fully move to the cloud. So if you are interested in a free assessment to help you in your journey, migration journey, then please visit our website at addteq.co.in in order to schedule your free assessment today. All right. I think we answered a couple of questions earlier, and we are probably a bit short on time. But yeah, if you have any other questions, please reach out and we'll try to get those answered. All right, Govind, handing it back to you.
I think most of the questions are already answered, but I can see one or two questions. I'll ask a couple of more questions. How can I get support during and after adoption of Enterprise Cloud?
So I think our speakers earlier, they spoke about how Atlassian has this really attractive SLA for the Atlassian cloud environments, and of course, as partners, Addteq also offers additional support and guidance as required. Not sure if any of the speakers want to add anything else to that.
You got it, Himanshu. We do have enterprise support available from our side, and and we also have partners as like Addteq who can also provide support during the journey to cloud.
And the only thing I'll add is that specifically during migration, one of the specialized resources we have in support is something called a Cloud Migration Manager. And they really help kind of manage that journey front to back. They'll work with partners like Addteq, they'll work with engineering, they'll work with support, and they'll really make sure that if any sudden potholes are encountered, that they help coordinate all the resources to help mitigate that proactively. So Cloud Migration Managers are key to that part of the process as well.
Thank you for your responses, and we'll take the last question for the day. Do we need to rewrite applications to make best use of cloud services?
I mean, it sounds like this may be pertaining to maybe custom apps that some of the customers may build. So if you have some custom apps and you've written custom code, then yes, most likely you will need to rewrite some or a lot of those. But Atlassian has excellent developer documentation on the API and so on. And also the other thing we encourage a lot of customers to do is before you kind of go ahead and rewrite the code or even write custom code in the first place, look in the Atlassian marketplace. Almost all of the major use cases and even some of the more exotic use cases are covered by a lot of the third-party apps. And then also now with Atlassian Cloud having built-in automation features like Jira automation can also sometimes be a replacement for a lot of those custom app and custom code needs.
Yeah, I agree. I say it's really important in those scenarios to kind of take a step back to understand not necessarily how integration or customization was done, but what you're trying to achieve, because there are different ways of doing it in the cloud platform, right? The Connect framework, the API frameworks are different. It is key to analyze and assess the add-ons, as Himanshu pointed out as well. So there are a few elements around that, and there might actually be better ways to do it in the cloud environment versus just trying to rewrite it or replicate it. Having said all that, if it is a really tailored custom piece of functionality that you have to do over, certainly we've got an API framework for that. We've got, as was mentioned, a lot of documentation to help get you across that as well. But yeah, it's important to understand what was being done versus just replicating it.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that was all the time we had for the questions. With this, we conclude our webinar and would like to thank each and everyone who gave us the opportunity to host such a wonderful audience for this webinar. Special thanks to all our speakers, Himanshu, Deepti, and Scott, for taking their time out for from a really busy schedule and gracing us with their presence. Till then, stay safe, everybody, and see you all very soon.